Hello, welcome to another edition of the VOD Weekly News Recap. I am glorious Haddjattou Njie. Good evening. Now let's look at the Gambia across our borders and international headlines. Minister of Justice says HOMM land is null and void. NCCE presents activity reports to FPAC. GAF issues deadline to end unauthorized use of military items. GFF sets date for its 2022 elective Congress. A fire outbreak leaves a family homeless. AU expresses deep shock over deaths at Spain-Morocco border. UN maintains peacekeepers in Mali as Russia and China abstain. Millions of Yemenis to go hungry as UN forced to slash food aid. South Africa's police issue rumor warning over travels dead. Sudan, Ethiopia, army clash at disputed border after attack that killed 7 soldiers. Macron tells Biden the UAE, Saudi can barely raise oil output. Iran applies to join China and Russia in BRICS club. Hundreds protest in Lisbon for ocean preservation outside Ocean Conference. R. Kelly given 30 years in jail for sex abuse. Huge landscape hits India's Manipur, causing many deaths. Those were the headlines. Now let's look at the news in details. The Ministry of Justice on Tuesday released a statement online in response to Nene the government of the Home of Medical Mission's ongoing land dispute. The minister stated that the Home of Medical Mission does not exist and as such, any lease issued to it is null and void, and further emphasized that the purported lease in the name of Home of Medical Mission has been cancelled. Speaking to Nene government, the country director of the Homes of Medical Mission said in the reaction to the minister's statement that it is bogus, and this further manifests to the fact that the government does not respect the rule of law and their actions will compromise the sanity of our judiciary. Minister of Justice Dauda Jallow further stated that the government is committed to due process and to national development and that the land is located within the tourism development area and has been set aside for the construction of the 5-star hotel co-owned by the government, saying that facilities will be instrumental in the hosting of the upcoming OIS summit and will significantly boost the tourism industry and provide crucial jobs both during the construction and operational phase. He further elaborated how the proposed lease was wrongfully issued under executive directive by former President Jammeh to an entity that they now know that does not exist, and that till date the only determination made by the courts are with regards to the issue of possession and the legalities of the process of cancellation of the lease. National Council for Civil Education on Tuesday presented its activity report and financial statement to the National Assembly Standing Committee on Finance and Public Accounts Committee. Yusufa Bojang, Program Manager of NCCE, said that the institution has over the years designed and adopted diverse strategies in engaging the public across the country. He said the diverse strategies intervention of the NCC in 2020 were executed through community sensitization, outreach, school sensitizations, media, radio and TV, interface dialogue, and a host of other available public engagement strategies to the Council. The NCCE Program Manager continued saying that as part of efforts to continually reach out and take civic education to the doorsteps of every Gambian, the NCCE, in the period under review, engaged TV and radio stations for 6 months to conduct weekly TV and radio talk shows.
Development partners, UNDP, embark on a nationwide radio and TV sensitization engagements through talk shows and airing of sports in selected radio stations across the country. This was to sensitize the public about the content of the final draft constitution, provide citizens with information about the final draft to enable them understand the content as well as enlighten them about the processes and journey that the Constitution will take before it becomes a law. That is true enough.
Bojang highlighted that in the context of the proper representation and participation of women and young people in decision-making at the national and local level, the NCCE, with support from UNFPA, conducted training sessions for selected communities in WCR, LRR, NBR, CRR, and URR from 1st to 10th December 2020 and targeted over 406 participants. The training, he added, was aimed at enhancing awareness and understanding of local and traditional authorities on the need to advance and uphold women and youth participation in decision-making and peace-building at grassroots levels, especially within the local government, decentralized structures. The Gambia Armed Forces has set 6 July 2022 as the deadline to end unauthorized use of militant uniforms, jackets, boots, and caps by some individuals or entities. This followed the institution's concern over what is called the unauthorized importation, sale, as well as uncontrolled usage of militant items. The GFA outlined that the use of these military-related fabrics have been seen online on several instances that are identical to the normal military associable functions, and that the wanted on abuse of the use of militant camouflage, combat boots and caps in public present security challenges to the armed and security services. The GFA said that this development is therefore unfortunate and dangerous precedent, and if left unchecked could be used beyond measures by organized criminal gangs and unscrupulous individuals, not only to impersonate members of the armed force, but also to perpetrate crimes within the community. And it may be instructive to know that it is prohibited under sections 169, subsection 1, 2, and 3 of the Criminal Code laws of the Gambia to use and engage in the importation and sale of military uniforms. They therefore advise individuals and businesses involved in this use, importations, and sale of military items to comply with this advisory to avoid confiscation and possible legal action. GFF sets date for its 2022 elective Congress. Haddjattou reports.
Mr. Sekou Bijaju, the vice chairperson of the Gambia Football Federation, on Thursday highlighted some current steps and positions taken by the Electoral Committee of the upcoming GFF Legislative Congress. He said that the Electoral Committee is elected by the members of the GFF in the last annual general meeting held in December of 2021. In line with the Article 30 of the Constitution of the GFF, which states that elections shall be conducted by the Electoral Committee, which shall be elected by the General Assembly in the AGM before the elective Congress in compliance with the Electoral Code. The mandate of Electoral Committee is derived from the Electoral Code of the Federation, which will be guiding principle of the members throughout the electoral process.
The General Secretary of the GFF shall serve as the Secretary to the Electoral Committee. He shall take part in activities of the committee in a consultative capacity. He is responsible for the related logistical matters and take care of administrative matters. I think that's very clear. He went further to say, I'm reading from the Electoral Code, Article 5.2, Article 5.6 also continued, and it stated, the Electoral Committee may be assisted by members of the Secretariat at any time, provided that they are not standing as candidates for elected posts.
He disclosed that the opening date and closing of the nominations is Thursday, 21st July 2022 at 9 a.m. to Thursday, 28 July at 4 p.m. And such nomination papers will be taken from and to the General Secretary of the GFF during working hours throughout, and then the Electoral Committee will announce the list of qualified in line with Article 12 on Thursday, 4th August of the Electoral Code. The final list of qualified candidates will be published on Saturday, 13 August, and election date is set for Saturday, 27 August, starting from 10 a.m., and that the venue was yet to be decided as disclosed. Haddjattou Njie reporting for VOD.
On Tuesday, 28 June, a tragic fire outbreak occurred in New Joshua, leaving families homeless and losing all their belongings. The people that lived there had gone to work, leaving behind their children. One of the tenants mentioned that whilst at work, he had an unusual feeling that made him went back to the house to check on his children, and upon arrival, he met the toddlers playing. He made sure everything was okay and remembered instructing the little ones not to enter the house to play. He further said upon reaching their junction, the shopkeeper asked him what was going on in their compound. He said he turned and all he saw was smoke, and that's when he ran back home to see what was happening.
So coming to one no suduga e pay ko ang didoy kono men fop tay men yehi golle commerce do men tay e be no dimme be ni men sundon sumi so men ari do men tay bagage on fo dal tigi tigi don fop boni dal e wano bagage be ngando der ganu la jogino ga wano mbudi e wano mbudi seda telende yahodi 48,000 tay no der ganu e mbudi pay ko an kadi tay hari fop no der ga kono mi tay do fo sumi kay ma e kaydiji e pay ko an koy hino ko odo tum mi wawiide e der kaydiji pay ko an koy ni.
Another man that lives in the same compound but on the other side mentioned to VOD that the cause of the fire was due to the failure of the socket breaker, that when he saw fire coming out of his neighbor's apartment, he tried to switch the cash power meter off, but he could not as the socket breaker kept tripping. He said he then took a stick to break the door open but could not, as he was the only one in the compound at that time. The smoke started entering his nostrils whilst another man came in and started helping him. As the fire spread, other residents started coming to help them bring water to turn the fire off. Fire service was called, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. Nothing could be recovered from the apartments. Everything was burnt to ashes. No one was hurt and neither was there any death. Youth were very angry at the time of their arrivals and evidently chased the fire service personnel out of the community with stones, as they said they believe the fire service had nothing else to do at that point.
The fire service came around, we have called them, but they have stayed for a very long. By the time they arrived, everything was just off. Everything was just broke down. So we couldn't have to wait for their service anymore, because we the youth around this area, we the youth around the neighborhood, we did all our efforts, we fetch water, and we make sure that we put off this fire. So we didn't see any necessity, we didn't see any value of the fire service if they are being employed, if they are being chosen to be in this office, and they are using our taxpayers' money for them to be paid every month. They should have responded to this kind of emergency immediately as soon as they are called.
An official from Igbo Town Police Station by the name of Buba Balde was with the youth helping extinguish the fire with his uniform, which got wet and dirty in the process. They are calling on the general public to help this said family during this trying time, and that a little help will go a long way in them trying to start all over again. Now let's look at the news across our borders. The African Union chief has expressed deep shock over the death of nearly 24 people while trying to break through a border fence between Morocco and the Spanish enclaves of Malaya, and called for an immediate investigation into the matter. Musa Fahid Mahamat, chairman of the African Union Commission, said on Monday that he was shocked at the degrading treatment of African migrants. I express my deep shock and concern at the violent and degrading treatment of African migrants attempting to cross an international border from Morocco into Spain, with the entrusting violence leading to the death of at least 23 people and injuries to many more, Mohammed said in a tweet. Morocco's Interior Ministry said in a statement that 23 people died on Friday due to what is described as a stampede after about 2,000 refugees and migrants tried to climb the metal border fence. The Moroccan authorities said that 140 police officers were also wounded in the violence. The UN Security Council voted Wednesday to maintain the UN peacekeeping mission in Tumarat, Mali, while condemning the West African nation's militant rulers for using mercenaries that commit human rights and humanitarian violations. The Council also expressed grave concern at the deteriorating political and security situations in the West African nation. Russia and China abstained on the French draft resolution that extends the mandate of the mission until June 30, 2023, with its current ceiling of 13,289 militant personnel and 1,920 international police. Mali has been in turmoil since a 2012 uprising prompted Mertimos soldiers to overthrow the president. The power vacuum that resulted ultimately led to an Islamic insurgency and a French-led war that upstirred the jihadists from power in 2013. But insurgents remained active and extremist groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group have moved from the 8th north to more populated center, Mali, since 2015, stoking animosity and violence between ethnic groups in the region. Millions of Yemenis to go hungry as UN forced to slash food aid. Haddjattou Njie reports.
The World Food Programme, WFP, has announced further dramatic cuts of food in Yemen, leaving millions of Yemenis already suffering through war unable to get enough food. The WFP said on Sunday that it was forced into that as a result of not receiving enough funding, global economic conditions, and the continued knock-on efforts of the Russia invasion of Ukraine. The WFP provides food aid to 13 million people in Yemen, but the new cuts mean it will only be able to provide 5 million of them with 50% of their daily food requirements, with the remaining 8 million only getting 25%. Caught between a protracted war and economic collapse, at least 17.4 million people, more than half of Yemen's population, are in need of food assistance. The WFP, which is the food assistance branch of the UN, added that resilience and livelihood activities and school feeding and nutrition programs would be cut for 4 million people, leaving it available for only 1.8 million people. Haddjattou Njie reporting for VOD.
Clashes have been reported at the disputed Al-Fasher border area between Sudanese army and that of Ethiopia following the alleged capture, execution and public display of the bodies of 7 soldiers and a civilian killed over the weekend. On Tuesday, Sudan said that it had fired heavy artillery and recaptured several of its territories that were being held by the Ethiopian army. Sudan's army fired long-distance artillery from Monday morning until Tuesday afternoon, but nobody was injured, said Asifa, a senior security official in Ethiopia Amhara region. The latest comes as the quarrel over Al-Fasher, where the northwest of Ethiopia's Amhara region meets Sudan's breadbasket gathering state, which has been settled by Ethiopian farmers for decades, escalating in recent years alongside a diplomatic spat over Ethiopia's construction of the hydropower dam. Militants' planes, according to BBC, could be seen circling the contested area as the Sudanese assault continues. Addis Ababa has denied the allegation from Sudan and its troops capturing the executed 7 Sudanese soldiers, but it has also insisted and accused Sudanese soldiers of encroaching into their territories. Yellow police tape now condos off the drinking place in the South African city of East London, where 21 teenagers died in unexplained circumstances. A forensics team has been going through the site at the Enayobini Trial to try to understand what exactly took place. There were no visible injuries on the bodies of the deceased, the authorities have said. So a crush seems an unlikely explanation. Some have said the victims were poisoned, but this is not confirmed. South Africa's Liquidators Border has said the owner of the tavern would face criminal charges after allegedly breaching license agreements. Some family members of the victims have been gathering at the tavern to try and find out the latest news.
My anger is towards the nature of what happened, you see. And if somebody took the responsibility of caring about more especially the children, you're not supposed to allow children to enter that area.
We are so heartbroken, guys. We lost one of our family member, a child who was doing grade 12 this year. We can't accept it. We are one of the poorest families. And as we are standing here right now, we need justice because we don't know what happened.
Among them was Zalair Malenjini. His 17-year-old daughter, Sneko, struck out of her home on Saturday night but never returned. She always loved and took care of them when I was ill, her father told the BBC with tears in his eyes. Alongside her, there are 20 other victims in the nearby mortuary. Post-mortem examinations have now been completed, but one person remains unidentified, and the provincial authorities have called on possible family members to come forward. The youngest of those who died was 13 and the oldest was 17, according to Police Minister Binky Sile. But a detailed list of the victims have not yet been produced. The minimum drinking age in South Africa is 18, so they should not have been allowed in. The venue was packed, entrance was free, and free alcohol was also being dished out. We started drinking and having fun with others, a 16-year-old girl who did not want to be named told the BBC. Now let's look at the international news. Two top OPEC oil producers, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, can barely increase oil production. French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday said he had been told by the UAE's president Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been perceived as only two countries in the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries with spare capacity to boost global deliveries that could reduce prices. I had a call with MBZ. Macron was heard telling US President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the G7 summit using shorthand for UAE leader Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. He told me two things. I'm at a maximum production capacity. That is what he claims. And then he said the Saudis can increase by 15,000 barrels per day, maybe a little bit more, but they don't have huge capacities before 6 months' time, Macron said. A statement from the UAE top energy officials late on Monday said that his country is producing its assigned public plus quota of 3.168 million barrels per day. In light of recent media reports, I would like to clarify that the UAE is producing near to our maximum production capacity based on its current OPEC plus production baseline, said Energy Minister Suhail bin Mohammed. Iran, which holds the world's second largest gas reserves, has applied to join the BRICS group of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa that Beijing and Moscow cast as a powerful emerging market alternative to the West. The term BRICS was coined by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill in 2001 to describe the starting rise of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. The BRICS powers had their first summit in 2009 in Russia. South Africa joined in 2010. Iranian membership in BRICS would result in added value of both sides. Tehran's foreign minister spokesperson said. Russia said Argentina has also applied to join. Russia cast the application as evidence that the West, led by the United States, was failing to isolate Moscow over what it calls its special military operations in Ukraine. Whilst the White House was thinking about what else to turn off in the world, ban or spoil, Argentina and Iran applied to join the BRICS. Russian Foreign Minister spokeswoman Maria said, Argentina's President Alberto, currently in Europe, recently reiterated his desire for his country to join BRICS. An Argentina government source said there was no formal progress to do so as yet, but that was the country's intention. Argentina authorities have already publicly expressed their willingness to join. It is a process that has only just begun, the source said, asking not to be named. Around 500 protesters marched across Lisbon on Wednesday, taking part in what they called a Blue March to attract the attention of world leaders and decision makers to ocean preservation, organized by over 200 local and international groups. The protest happened just a few kilometers away from the venue where the United Nations Ocean Conference was taking place. The 5-day UN global event is gathering officials and scientists from more than 120 countries. The UN is hoping the conference will bring fresh momentum to the portrayed efforts for a global ocean agreement that covers conservation efforts on the high sea. U.S. singer R. Kelly has been sentenced to 30 years in prison for using his celebrity status to sexually abuse children and women. The R&B artist, 55, was convicted last September in New York of racketeering and sex trafficking crime. He has faced years of allegations, and the judge on Wednesday said he had an indifference to human suffering. Lawyers for the singer, whose real name is Robert Sylvester Kelly, said he will appeal.
R. Kelly is a predator, and as a result of our prosecution, he'll serve a long jail sentence for his crimes.
Obviously, he's devastated. 30 years in prison is like a life sentence for him, but at the same time, we knew the government was asking for 25 years. We were prepared for what the judge might impose, so it didn't come as a great big surprise. We were prepared for it, and we are now prepared to fight this appeal.
Ahead of his sentencing, a handful of women took the stand to confront Kelly. A woman identified only as Angela called the singer a Pied Piper who grew in wickedness with every new victim, whilst others who were not named testified he had broken their spirits. I literally wished I could die because of how you made me feel, she said. Dressed in prison khaki and dark glasses, Kelly declined to make a statement of his own and did not react as the verdict was handed down. U.S. District Judge Ann Donnelly said the celebrity has used sex as a weapon, forcing his victims to do unspeakable things and saddling some with sexual transmitted diseases. You taught them that love is enslavement and violence, she said. The court had how Kelly, known for hit songs like I Believe I Can Fly and Intuition, used his influence to lure women and children into sexual abuse over 2 decades.
It was a very special but hard day for us. I personally, this happened to me a long time ago. I was 17, I'm 45 today. I never thought that I would be here to see him be held accountable for the atrocious things that he did to children. I don't know what else to say except that I'm grateful. I'm grateful for today. And I'm grateful that Robert Sylvester Kelly is away, will stay away, and will not be able to harm anyone else.
I started this journey 30 years ago. I was 14 years old when I encountered Robert Sylvester Kelly. There wasn't a day in my life up until this moment that I actually believed that the judicial system would come through for Black and brown girls. I stand here very proud of my judicial system, very proud of my fellow survivors, and very pleased with the outcome. 30 years did he do this, and 30 years is what he got.
Today, R. Kelly was sentenced to prison for his many crimes against underage girls. And R. Kelly used the power of his celebrity and his music business to lure and to manipulate and to isolate and to denigrate many young girls. Together, they were able to fight his power by becoming empowered young women themselves, who refused to be intimidated by him and his enablers. I am proud of all of them.
Jurors at his 6-week trial in Brooklyn heard how he trafficked women between different U.S. states, assisted by managers, security guards, and other members of his entourage. At least 7 people have died and another 55 are feared to have been killed after a massive landscape hit a remote area of northeast India's Manipur state, local officials said. Rescue workers battled heavy rains and inclement climate and pulled out 19 survivors from the rubble after the landslide occurred at Tripur Railway construction site in Norman district in the early hours of Thursday. The workers said the likelihood of finding more people was thin. In all, there were about 81 people. The chances of survival of the remaining 55 people are very thin, considering the fact that the landslide occurred around 2 a.m. Pauline Nicola, the district magistrate of Noni, where the accident occurred, told Reuters news agency by telephone. That's all we have for you today. Until we come your way again, I am Haddjattou Njie on the VOD Weekly News Recap. Thanks for watching and have a good evening.